This is Patriots Playbook.
The legend.
What are we? 2-9, 2-10, 2-12, 2-80? What are we? Talk about paying attention to detail. We ain't doing that around here lately. Nope. The Army-Navy game is here at Gillette this weekend. That has long been a bucket list item of mine in the sports world. A life bucket list, and you have a sports bucket list. I want to take a cruise on the Nile River and see the pyramids and the Sphinx. I'm not sure I want to get off the boat, but I want to see them. Oh, okay. Hey, look, there's the Sphinx. Hey, his nose is busted. Okay, bye. We blow and everybody knows it. Okay, so welcome into the Playbook.
Now, here's your host of Patriots Playbook, John Rook.
You get a particular evil pleasure out of putting some of these things together out of context, don't you?
It doesn't make me laugh. It doesn't go in the open.
It's all right, I guess.
I don't like being in the open.
You don't like being in the open?
No, because I don't like hearing myself talk. Like, it's just one of the, some people are like that. Like
You're still one of those? Like,
yeah.
Oh, I sound terrible on the air.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Okay. I got used to that a long time ago.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Long time ago. I've been doing this for over 45 years, and I still don't like the way that I sound when I listen to myself.
Yeah, I can't do it.
Okay?
It's like nails on the chalkboard to me.
It's an acquired taste.
Yeah.
It simply is an acquired taste, and I don't know why it's that way. It just is. When it happens live, you're doing it live, you don't think about it, but when you listen to it, is it live or it's Memorex? I don't know. It just, you hear things differently. It's just weird like that. And so when you already have an issue with your voice, and I realize some people's voices are, shall we say, more naturally inclined to resonate over the air than others.
That is definitely true.
I don't, like I said, I have a hard time with it myself.
Yeah.
I still do, and I've been doing this for a long time. So you'll get used to it.
Yeah.
You get used to it.
Maybe.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. So I did have a blast the Army-Navy game last weekend.
Yes.
Really did. I mean, that was a ton of fun. It was really cool for, I think, our audience. And, of course, I know there are a lot of people coming in from outside the area, Army people, Navy people, even college football fans. But just to sample college football pomp and circumstance and pageantry and tradition and rivalry and loyalty and because you don't get a lot of that in the pro game these days. The loyalty really is to the almighty dollar, which sadly is the way that the college game seems to be slipping. But the almighty dollar being out there is the pressure unto itself, and everybody wants to grab it while they can. Another story for another day. I just thought that. And it turned out to be a pretty good game. It wasn't great for about three quarters. And the fourth quarter, both teams kind of turned on the Jets, and then Navy ended up basically losing by about a foot, which was a hell of a way to end the game. But nevertheless, it was well done, well played. The local organizing committee, I thought, did a super job, with the exception, of course, of the state turning people away out of hotels because they've already filled them with immigrants. And that's, again, another story for another day.
Not touching that one.
I'm just saying, was not the smartest move to make, because I know the goal here is to get some sort of a long-term tradition going where that Gillette could potentially be like, the once every 5-year rotation for this game. And I don't know how much they, helped or hurt themselves because of this whole issue over being a sanctuary state. I don't get it. I don't get it. Why wouldn't you want to bring money in rather than just keep paying it out and paying for other people? And knowing that you're doing this is just going to drive business away makes no freaking sense to me.
Yeah, I don't know enough about that, honestly. I didn't go to the Army-Navy game, but just watching, I did watch the fourth quarter on TV, and I said what I said about the football. I stand by that. The football is not good. It's just not good.
It's a different kind of football. You're comparing it to the NFL. You're comparing it to Georgia, Alabama. You're comparing
football.
For college.
Yeah.
But if you put Georgia or Alabama on the field, they're not going to beat the Patriots.
Yeah, I would just say that what was, I think, cool is that you don't get, whether it's Army-Navy or it's Georgia-Alabama or another big rivalry game, the college atmosphere, like you said, is second to none. Like, you're not going to get pro sports fans to be as rowdy as those people were at Army-Navy, as the cadets were at Army-Navy. But that's just not going to happen.
That's part of the fun, though, because they're
absolutely.
college kids, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're disciplined college kids, but at the same time, they're still college kids.
Yeah.
I mean, like, to see their reaction when their faces appeared on the Jumbotron, was still almost genuine. Whereas, people go, and go crazy when their faces get on nowadays. These kids are, like, generally surprised. And you don't really expect that out of them.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of unusual. And here's another thing. Marching bands. We don't get enough of them around here. We don't get enough of that.
I do like a good marching band halftime show.
Maybe once a year we might get UMass's band in here,
Yeah.
and they have a pretty good program. I'll give them that.
Yeah.
Good marching band, good program. But, when you get a chance to hear both bands perform at halftime, and I'm like, man, it just lets you know, if you've never experienced it, that it's really a different experience. And that if you're trying to compare the NFL to college, you really shouldn't. Stop. Because it's, as you've already pointed out, it's a different kind of football. It doesn't mean you still can't appreciate it for what it is. They still block, they still tackle, they still throw, they still run.
They all throw is,
Well,
say
not
that.
Army and Navy didn't throw it very well.
Yeah.
Because they're mostly ground-oriented offenses, and that's, true. And there's a reason behind that, because Army and Navy can't recruit the kind of athletes that other schools recruit.
See, but the thing is, though, is every high school in America, for the most part, is starting to go to more of like a modern spread offense. Like, I can go down to the
Haven't
street.
they done that for the last 10 to 15 years?
But, like, I can go down the street to, like, Foxborough High, and I'm sure that they're running, like, an air raid. Like that.
They might be.
Yeah, like, that's how these – so why can't Army-Navy? Like, I don't that's the part that I don't understand.
Because they don't have the physical talent in order to be able to operate it. I'll give you an example. Wide receivers, don't you usually have to beat your other guy? Don't you usually have to have more speed than the other guy?
But my point is
they
that
don't have that.
If every high school in America has it, then how can't
because
it's a college team.
Because it's relative. The difference between Army and Navy and Georgia and Alabama is too one-sided. Whereas, the difference between most high schools, it's very close.
That's fair. I don't know. I just think that there's and I know that Army, I know that Army, their new head coach and their new system that they're running there, they call it the flex bone.
Yes.
And it's a modern spread with the old school wishbone stuff, right?
It is.
So they are they're middling it right now at Army, which I guess is better than nothing.
That's true.
But
Army had to adjust because they outlawed the cut block.
Right.
So they can't cut block. And that's the most effective way to block when you're running an option, because you're going to catch guys leaning one way and having to make them play another, and you basically trip them and flip them without tripping them.
Yeah.
But that's how you block, when you're running a triple option offense.
Cut blocking in the NFL, they've outlawed that as well on screens, and it's been a big thing. For years and years and years.
Yeah.
Dante Scarnecchia coached cut blocking in space.
Mm-hmm.
If you're out on a screen, if you're out on a perimeter run, whatever the case may be, as an offensive lineman, you were cut blocking for Dante Scarnecchia.
Right.
That was the rule of thumb. And now that they can't do that anymore, David Andrews has talked a lot about it. It's a big adjustment for those guys, that especially guys that grew up in that Dante Scarnecchia system, like a David Andrews.
Mm-hmm.
who's been cut blocking for 8 years, and then all of a sudden they say to you, you got to find a different way to block this screen. We can't cut block anymore, and that's tough.
That's a hard thing for to do when you've been trained to do it your whole life.
Yeah.
And the point is with Army and Navy, they run these offenses because it's easier to find personnel to run an offense that takes extreme discipline to stay in. And I think that's part of it, number one. Now, up until the last year or two, Navy did run a bit more of a passing offense than you see now with the flex bone. And Army has also varied it somewhat because they were actually, even pure wishbone for a while. But I would tell you that all things are cyclical. Teams that don't measure up talent-wise, okay, that know that they don't measure up talent-wise, athletic-wise, they're left to resort to running schemes like option offenses.
Yeah.
Because teams don't regularly see them. They don't regularly prepare for them.
Right.
And it does take discipline in order to be able to, hold your man down and stay on your block and not go and force a pitch and that kind of thing. That's how teams that don't have the talent stay on even keel with them and are able to participate. This I know because I ran a wishbone offense at one time, and even though it was, wishbone and flex and veer offenses were the rage when I was in school. Fact of the matter is, though, is that if you had athleticism 40 years ago plus, that you were at an extreme advantage in running it because you had guys who could get around the corner.
Yeah.
All you had to do was hit one block and boom, you're off and running. Now you got to be able to hit a block just to get a few yards because the athleticism allows you to overcome a lot of that. So the only way you can move the ball is by doing it in an offense that teams don't normally prepare for.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part in some respects of the Baltimore Ravens' success in the NFL in the beginning with Lamar Jackson was just how unique it was of an offense. And actually, they ran a lot of veer. They run a lot of veer, a lot of inverted veer because the quarterback is the one keeping the ball up the middle. But they run a ton of veer in Baltimore, and just thinking about the Malik Cunningham stuff this week a little bit. Like they run a lot of veer. They run a lot of option, obviously, in Baltimore.
Correct.
And they now under Todd Monken, their new offensive coordinator, they've upgraded their passing offense. Like they're much more advanced in the drop back passing game than they were with Greg Roman. But Greg Roman started that in the NFL really with Colin Kaepernick, and now is doing it, or did it, I should say, with Lamar. And they ran a ton of veer and like wing T-ish type of stuff or flex bone type of stuff, but it's just done with the best running quarterback in the world instead of some kid that goes to Navy. Right.
So I mean, exactly. And look, I realize all things are relative. Is there anybody on either of those teams that played here last week, that might end up on an NFL roster? There might be a Joe Cardona in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And
Malcolm Perry.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But I think we all realize that, if you're really looking, if you're totally into the NFL, and I think one of the points I tried to make a little bit last week was, look, I realize everybody loves the NFL. That's why the NFL is the most popular sport on the planet.
Yeah.
But the sport of football itself is still being played at other levels, and you can still appreciate it for what it is at its level and as a potential training ground, clearly, for future professional opportunities. Don't know if there's anybody in Army and Navy that's going to end up in the pros. I think that probably happens on average once every 5 or 6 years, that you might get somebody from one of those teams who will actually sneak through and sign a free agent deal, or be a Napoleon McCallum or someone like, or Roger Staubach even. I mean, that's really been once in a generation.
Yeah. So a big thing too for those programs is that because of the services, they actually have weight limits on their players.
Well, they have weight limits because, let's put it to you this way: if you're in the Air Force or in the Naval Academy and you fly planes, starting to be a Navy pilot, you can't be 6'6" and 380 flying in the cockpit. You can't.
Correct.
You won't fit.
So a good example of that is last year Army had an NFL prospect, Andre Carter, who's not related to Patriots Andre Carter,
but a good example.
So he played, I think, outside he played outside linebacker. I know that for a fact, but I think he played at like 220 or 225 or something really, really light. And that was because of the restrictions at Army that he couldn't be heavier than that.
Right.
Then he goes to the Senior Bowl down in Mobile and just gets destroyed.
Knocked
just knocked like he's a high school kid on a college
because
football
he
field.
just didn't have the size or the muscle.
Yeah, he ends up going undrafted. Somebody that people were projecting as maybe a top 100 pick ended up going undrafted. I don't know if he's on a practice squad or something like that somewhere now, but it turned out that he just didn't have the size, to hold up in the NFL game. So that it's a big part of that as well.
Maureen, did they put a weight limit on you in the military? Yeah.
I don't remember what it is, but there's a weight limit.
Was it based on your height, or was it just overall?
Yeah, it's your BMI, your body mass index.
BMI. Okay. So you couldn't be over, a certain percentage over BMI or whatever it is?
You could be over it if you were a certain amount of weight over it. Then you were in the pork chop platoon. You had to wear a red stripe on your shirt.
I love that. So it's like a scarlet letter. You're fat.
The pork
You're
chop
fat.
platoon.
Is that real, or is he just messing
That's
with
real.
it? That's awesome.
That
And
is
a
awesome.
red stripe across your green shirt.
Were you ever in the pork chop platoon?
It was not, no.
Have you seen Marine?
Yeah, I know, right? Guy's lean as he can be still.
Yeah.
How many years you been out?
I'm going on 10 now.
Good gosh. And you're still holding your playing weight.
I gained it back a few years ago. I lost it all.
Okay, see, but that's good. Yeah, you lost all because you got sick, or was it when you broke your arm or broke your tooth? What was it?
Because I got a daughter.
Oh, well, that would do it. That would definitely do it. All right, so we started off with a digression today.
Yeah.
What we'll end up talking about here in just a little bit. There's an actual game that the Patriots won last week. It's almost shocking to even think that. It seemed like it happened so long ago. It did. It was almost a week ago, 6 days ago. But we're going to talk about the Pittsburgh game in just a moment. Karen Guregian, who covers the Patriots for MassLive.com, she's going to join us. We will also have Jesse Newell from the Kansas City Star to talk a little Chiefs, because quite frankly, the Chiefs are coming in here 2 losses in a row, and they got to be doubting themselves just a little bit. I can't really say that that's not a bad thing for the Patriots. It probably is, but I can't say that, because if you got a team in some turmoil, they probably come in thinking, okay, well, we got a chance now to righten the ship, to maybe, keep it from listing a little bit. I'll use an Army-Navy term there for a little bit, okay? And so, but I'm not so sure that the Patriots might not be able to answer that, because the weapons that the Chiefs have are different. I'm not saying the Patriots are winning the game. I'm just saying that could be interesting.
Chiefs can't score a lot of
They're
points.
struggling right now.
Yeah, I mean, when I say they can't score, the Patriots can't score. The Chiefs are relatively can't score.
Right.
They're 11th in scoring right now, 22.5, I think it is, points per game. But you really look at their last month, they've lost 3 out of 4 games. They don't score like they used to anymore unless they get a lot of ways, similar to the Patriots the last couple of years. Defensive takeaways, short fields, turnovers, pick sixes, like that. That's how they've been running up scores like the Chiefs of old. But the days of them just driving up and down the field and hanging 35 on you, that doesn't exist anymore. And I think if you look at this Patriots team, the one thing they've been able to hang their hat on is that defensively they've been all right on that side of the ball, and against a average Chiefs offense, relatively speaking. It's a game that shouldn't get away from the Patriots.
Nope.
It's not a game that they necessarily should win, but they should not lose this game by 20 points either.
We know that out of the 13 games that they have played thus far, they really, 2 of them were blowouts. So it's, a relatively close encounter in the other 11 that they've played.
Yeah.
I have no reason to believe, based on what we've seen going into this game, that won't be the case here on Sunday. And I know there's an entirely different issue going on here about moving the game from Monday night to Sunday, and I know it's something that we haven't really dealt a lot with. You guys talked about it a little bit, did you not, on Unfiltered?
I'm sure we did at the time.
Yeah, but I mean, fact of the matter is I've heard from a ton of people that are like, I got to do something with my tickets because I planned this and I have that. I got a hotel room, do that, because they've slid it back the other way. And my answer has always been, well, unfortunately, that's because your team stinks. And the football world is ruled by television.
Yeah, I do wonder, personal story first. My family's Hanukkah party is on Sunday. And it was partially, it wasn't all about me. It was partially planned on Sunday because the Patriots played on
Monday night.
Played on Monday night. So now we had to move things around. I would say that I wonder if the league, obviously you have to make these decisions earlier than this, but if the league had seen the Thursday night Patriots with Bailey Zappi against the Steelers in Pittsburgh, would that have been?
Would they still have made the decision?
Would they still have moved this game? Because what I think is crazy about it is that the Patriots of old just to kind of, Chiefs aren't us yet, right?
Yes,
They're
right.
not here yet.
No.
The Patriots of old don't get flexed out of primetime games,
never.
no matter who they're playing.
Right.
They could be playing the Sam Darnold Jets in the Seeing Ghosts game when he's, putting up a goose egg, and they're still playing on primetime. The Brady Belichick Patriots.
They were enough of a draw.
So that to me is, I looked at it at the time, and everybody made a big deal. First team ever to be flexed out of Monday Night Football. My whole thing is as a good company man that I am, let's look at it the other way. Like, why are the Chiefs getting flexed out of Monday Night Football? Aren't the Chiefs supposed to be NFL's? They got the best quarterback. They got this high-flying offense. They got Taylor Swift in every game.
I actually think that's an accurate point, because if they were all that, like the Brady-led and Belichick Patriots were of old, that the Chiefs wouldn't have been flexed out.
They should draw.
They should have enough
on their
star
own.
power. Yes,
and they didn't.
And no, they didn't. So that tells me that they're not at the level of the Patriots, and they haven't been at the level of the Patriots. Yes, I'm glad you said that, because I would have been accused of being a cheerleader.
No, I just think that's the way that. Because I don't necessarily look at, and maybe this is because of my employer, I don't know. But I don't necessarily look immediately towards the negative side of, they got flexed out of Monday Night Football because they stink, and the Patriots are so terrible that they can't play on prime
Chiefs
time.
alone, even with Taylor Swift, are not enough of a draw. End of discussion.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's with the Taylor Swift thing.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure everybody expects her to be in a skybox here somewhere on Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a game that they should be, the Patriots should be able to be competitive in. But I think the big question is, they start and Zappy said this, during his press conference this morning. They started fast against Pittsburgh. They scored 3 touchdowns the first 23 minutes of the game, and they were up 21-3. Now they're not going to be up 21-3 on Kansas City.
Notice they had the first possession of the game too.
Oh,
although it's only because they lost the coin flip.
Yeah, you can thank Matthew Slater for that. Called the wrong tails.
Yeah, no, he should. Matt Slater, when he's out there, he should automatically try to lose the flip. Now I don't know, I don't know if Bill tells him, call heads or call tails. I think it's because having the ball won you a game. They were able to start fast. Every time they defer, they screw up. Have they had a double score once this year?
Well, no, they can't execute that.
No, they can't.
No.
So it's absolute insanity for them to be trying that when they know they can't do it. Do something you can do.
Well, that was their first opening drive touchdown of the year.
Right.
So I don't know if they can do it. Like,
no,
I don't know
they can't.
They can't score that
They've
either.
had 13 weeks to show us they can't.
Yeah, last year it took till Thanksgiving night in Minnesota for them to have an opening drive touchdown. This week it took until after Thanksgiving for them to have an opening drive touchdown. I just think that you look at how they started that game. They started that game throwing the ball 68% of the time. They were aggressive. They chucked the ball down the field. They took the shots to Juju Smith-Schuster and Hunter Henry and right outside the red zone, and they were aggressive. They had an attack mindset in the passing game. And I think this is another one of those games against Mahomes that you have to figure, even though Kansas City's offense isn't scoring 40 points a game like they were a couple of years ago, they're going to get to 20. They're going to get to 20. And you're going to have to at least score into the 20s to win this ball game.
To win the game, yeah.
And so therefore, I think that you need to try to have the same exact start. You need to be pedal to the metal right out of the gate.
No question.
And then if you want to try to ride Zeke in the second half and maybe manage the game a little bit more late, then that's one thing. But early on in this game, I think you have to come out slinging, because that was the one thing they did last week, and they did it well.
The other thing is you have to figure out a way to cut back on your mistakes, is there's still too many self-inflicted wounds here. I mean, the fact that they have key penalties, that there have been turnovers, there's been an occasional pick, although a lot of that was Mac Jones's problem. But I'm just saying there are mistakes still being made in Week 13, going into Week 14, that really should have been cleaned up in the first month of the season, and they still are not. So there's a fundamental flaw either in the way they're teaching or in the way that the players are comprehending, because the players are smart enough to know, hey, I can't do that. Like the whole offsides, offensive offsides that, the Chiefs had.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the dumbest thing I've ever seen when they showed it on the still frame, how the receiver lined up offside. How does he not know he is offsides?
Yeah.
That's a completely dopey play, and it's totally on the receiver.
Yeah, the Patriots, look, I have a tough time calling them self-inflicted wounds at this point, because they've done it all year. So, at some point, that's just who you are, right? And I would say that's who they were last year.
And I'd say that then that's a piss poor job of coaching and teaching.
Yeah, and I think that's in a lot of ways when we get down to, you can be in the fire Bill camp simply because they're 3-10 and just chalk it up to that and go on your way.
Bottom line.
But when you try to actually narrow down to these are the coaching reasons why this team isn't good right now, I think you can see a lot of the cracks in the foundation come back to little things like you're talking about. The details on this football team just don't seem as buttoned up as they used to. They're not good in the kicking game. They turn the ball over offensively. They have procedural penalties that they didn't used to have back in the day. Like, they just have things that go differently for them than what they used to do with the self-inflicted wounds. It feels like every single week, even when Bailey Zappi was playing well against the Steelers, that interception he threw in the second half was coming. Like, you just knew that at some point they were going to have a turnover.
Yeah.
Then they make the matter worse by following up the turnover with a blocked punt, and the defense actually got
blocked punt by their own guy.
The defense actually got a turnover on downs after the Zappi pick. Mm-hmm. They got off the field. They didn't give up any points, but then immediately after that, the offense goes 3 and out, punt, blocked punt. And here Pittsburgh is on another short field. You can't expect your defense to stop them on a short field 2 times in a row. Right. So I think that all those types of things are just why they are who they are. And special teams is something that's been the bane of my existence for 2 years now because of how much they invest in special teams and how much time they spend on special teams and how important special teams are to the head coach.
How did they go so bad so fast? Is it really just the overall caliber of the player that they've chosen for their special teams? That's the puzzler to me.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, when Joe Judge was here before he left for the Giants, the Patriots had one of the better special team units in the NFL.
Yeah.
He returns, all of a sudden, they go to bleep in a handbasket.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's fair to point to the coaching, and Cam McCord and Joe Judge have to wear a lot of that responsibility. Mm-hmm. I also just think that there's something to be said for that being a phase of the game that kind of gets fueled by success and fueled by winning. And are you going to be as detail-oriented on a punt block when you're 3-10 and you're eliminated from the playoffs and it's not the AFC Championship game? You know what I'm saying? It just, those are the types of things that I think tend to fall through the cracks more so than some of the forward-facing stuff. Like the fact that they're competing on defense. Well, yeah, because they don't want to be a laughing stock on that side of the ball. They don't want to give up 40 points a game, and then they don't have jobs next year, and then they're free agents with bad tape and all that kind of like that. They don't want that. But in the kicking game, it's one area where you can kind of just half-ass it.
Yeah.
Honestly,
yeah,
and that's how it feels.
I think that's what they've done.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, it's put them in a bad position in a lot of ways. Set them up with bad field position, or it's created tough field position for their defense, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
It hasn't helped the situation, and you need things to put you in a situation to make you more competitive. They haven't taken advantage of that, and that's truly been one of the bigger disappointments I think of this entire season. Is that a team that has basically predicated its build into a dynastic, franchise on the little thing, has almost ignored the little things. And if they haven't ignored them, then they haven't done a very good job of teaching them.
Yeah, I mean, they're on the margins in terms of these games for the most part, and they don't have the talent anymore to just win on talent alone. So if they were going to win games this year, it was going to be on the margins. It was going to be the more detail-oriented team, the more prepared team. Mm-hmm. All these little things. And I think that that's where the ownership, that's where the organization, that's where everybody looks for Bill Belichick to be the big difference maker. Is that okay? So you don't have Tom Brady anymore, but you have Bill. So that means when you go and you play, they're on a commercial right now, but it's kind of a good comparison. Right. The Chargers, you go play these Chargers teams in the past, and it's like, well, they had such a coaching advantage. They were the more buttoned up, the more prepared team. And even when the Chargers had some good teams, the Phillip Rivers, LaDainian Tomlinson years, the Patriots would still kill the Chargers. I mean, the Patriots had won 8 in a row or something like that against the Chargers until a couple weeks ago when they lost to Herbert in 6-0.
Yep.
6-0. Like that used to be, the Patriots would win that game all
and
the
we
time.
had a 3-0 game in the NFL this last weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
which blew me away even more than the 6-0 game did.
And the 3-0 game was almost 0-0. Like that game,
yes,
it took
it
a
almost tied
last-second field goal.
0-0. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Which would have been even more stunning.
Yeah. So, I think a lot of people from the outside looking in, especially not maybe people that listen to us, but like I go on other radio shows and stuff like that sometimes. And those people that are outside the market always ask me, like, is it really that bad? Like, you're really thinking, not me personally, but
Yeah.
the Patriots are really thinking of firing Bill Belichick? Like, how
Right.
could, and then when I really start to lay out the case for letting go of Bill, you talk about the fact that they haven't won a playoff game since 2018. You talk about the fact that they're sub 500 since Tom Brady left. You talk about the fact that they're 3-10 this year, and you really start to think about it, and you're like, man, they just haven't really been a good team
No, they haven't.
in 5 years.
Right.
And that's how we get to where we're at. But I will say this about the positives from the Pittsburgh game quickly.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
That the beginning of the game against Pittsburgh probably all season long. Maybe Buffalo in the fourth quarter
Close.
was up there, but just
Close.
in terms of explosiveness and
Yeah.
making plays and things like that, the Buffalo game, they were really sharp in the fourth quarter. I guess is the adjective I would use. This game, they were hitting plays down the field. 37 yards to Juju Smith-Schuster, 28 to Juju Smith-Schuster, 24 to Hunter Henry. Like, we're talking about chunks. Those plays they haven't had all year.
Nope, haven't had chunk plays. That's
So-
exactly right.
So that was good to see, and we'll see what Bailey Zappi ends up being. I don't know. At this point, like, we got into the whole Bailey Zappi thing. I'm like, whatever. I was wrong that Bailey Zappi can't play. Like, let's see what happens. Like, I don't know. I can't doubt Bailey Zappi anymore. I still don't think he's a franchise quarterback or anything crazy like that. But the guy just continuously puts out decent tape when he's given the whole week to start and the whole week to prepare. He's 3-1 as a starter, and
So let it play out.
if he does it again, he does it again.
Right. I have two quick things I need to ask you about before
Yeah.
we move on. Number one, Malik Cunningham's departure.
Yeah, I think that one, to me, was a situation that I felt like was mishandled from the jump.
Agreed.
And they brought him in May as a UDFA, and they immediately forced him to switch. Not, I shouldn't say forced, because he might have been okay with it too, but they immediately switched him to wide receiver. And when I watched his film at Louisville, I said, there's enough here, and this is on Patriots.com, so this isn't revisionist history.
Right.
There's enough here to develop him at quarterback.
Quarterback, yeah.
And keep him at quarterback, at least for the summer, and see where it goes at quarterback. And I would have much rather have seen them do that. And I think what happened is he got his foundation in this system at receiver.
Yep.
Spring and summer is all about laying that installation of your core plays in the playbook and the foundation of your offense. And all of that he was taking in as a wide receiver. By the time that they realized that, we could actually use him at quarterback now because Mac Jones isn't working out, he was playing catch up at the quarterback position, and he was too far behind.
Too far behind to really make a difference.
Right.
100%. I'm with you
Yeah.
on that one. I thought that they screwed up from the get-go on Malik.
Right.
Number two, the fact that the Patriots actually have statistically the number one ranked run defense
Yeah.
in the NFL. And, if you've been feeling bad about the Patriots all season long, here's something you finally can hang your hat on.
Yeah. And
Is this something they can sustain through upcoming free agency?
I don't know, because look, they have the number one run defense by pretty much every single meaningful metric that there is.
Yep.
Like EPA, DVOA, success rate,
Yep.
yards per carry. They are the best run defense in the league. They're elite in run defense. Now, what does that mean in 2023? Like, we can have that big
Maybe
picture
not a lot.
conversation.
Yeah.
But I will just say that Anthony Jennings, Devon Godshaw, Christian Barmore, Jawan Bentley, Jelani Tavai, Dietrich Wise, Lawrence Guy, those guys are going to work every single week
day.
against the run. And Anthony Jennings has turned out to be kind of a game changer in that way. And
He's been a find.
Yeah, he's been really, really good at the end of the line. And they've been really difficult to run on, really tough. And Devon Godshaw has been fantastic.
He has.
Playing the
So
nose.
has Christian Barmore.
Yeah, and those guys deserve credit for it. I was out at practice today, and DeMarcus Covington, their defensive line coach, was doing some drills right in front of us. And I think that that's a coach that if you want to look at the future and look at the next iteration of the Patriots, if Gerard Mayo sticks around in some capacity, DeMarcus Covington's a guy that I think is a really, really good coach. If there's one group on this team that has exceeded expectations, it's probably the defensive line room.
Could he be a coordinator?
I think someday. I mean, he's a guy that has his group is all playing good football to great football. Like Christian Barmore is one of their best players. Anthony Jennings is playing great football. Jelani Tavai is having a great season. They lose Matthew Judon, and they're still playing great ball across the line of scrimmage.
That was the original. That was the whole premise behind this, because I said, look, we know that Judon would be iffy, but at the same time, they're still doing it without him already.
Yeah, they do.
Doesn't help his case a lot, does it?
They're doing it all without their best player
Right.
in that area of the team, and I think that DeMarcus Covington's got to get some credit for that. I mean, he's coached a really good position group this year, and guys like Jennings, the guys that play like edge linebacker, those guys are in the room with DeMarcus Covington because they're on the line players. All those guys have had great years, pretty much across the board.
Right. Ev, thanks for the time today, as
Anytime.
always, buddy. All right, Evan Lazar at Easy Lazar. That's where you find him on X. Speaking of finding him on X, at K Guregian. Guregian. Geez, I hope, Karen, that I spelled it right. Did I spell it right?
You did.
Amazing, amazing. All right, A for the day for me. Karen Guregian, who covers the Patriots for MassLive.com, joining us here in the Playbook. You obviously heard the last couple of minutes anyway of the conversation that Evan and I were having about the good and the bad here. What are your thoughts just overall, number one, on how the Patriots, first of all, handled the entire Malik Cunningham story from start to finish?
I don't think it was the best look for the team, how they handled the Malik Cunningham thing. They spent the most money, or overspent, or outbid, let me put it that way, all potential suitors when he was a rookie free agent. He came in with all these great stats as a Louisville quarterback, both throwing the football and running the football. And, I wrote about this, and it's like, when I saw that signing initially, I'm thinking, well, maybe they're eventually going to evolve, and have a more mobile quarterback, something more within the times of what's being successful in the NFL. But then their immediate plan was to make him a receiver. And then you say, well, okay, they've had success doing that as well, Julian Edelman.
Yeah, well, that comes to mind, sure.
Yeah. But then in the first preseason game, it's almost like they threw him in at garbage time just to fill a slot, and he electrified the crowd. Granted.
And nobody thought anything of it. It just, all right, you, back to the dungeon. You're going to go play receiver.
I know. I mean, granted, it was against like third and fourth stringers from the Texans, but still, there was something there.
Yeah.
And then, so you're thinking, okay, and then we actually saw it in the training camp practices. They were incorporating him down by the goal line in the red zone, and were saying, hey, maybe he could be some kind of trick weapon,
But they didn't do that. They didn't even run any. We didn't even see any in there in any packages or anything. It was like, why? Especially when this offense needed a jump start. When this offense still needs something, out there, and they don't have it.
And they're losing. And,
yes,
and the
and they're
playoffs
losing.
Have been a long gone, foregone conclusion.
And they still didn't pull the trigger on it. It's just it boggles the mind.
Right. Yeah. Don't you want to know what you have? Don't you know what the possibilities are? Either your side or to possibly trade him. You need to know what you have. And I don't think the Patriots knew what they had. I don't think they had a particularly ironclad plan for him. And so once again, here's the word I'm going to use, John. They didn't quite develop him properly through the course of the season.
That, Karen, is the absolutely at the root of the entire evil problem that encompasses the Patriots now: development or lack thereof. There's no development of some of the younger players, or very little of it anyway. There's no development of discipline, or very little of it, because we've seen that with the mistakes that this team has made. I mean, the entire
it's all missing.
Yes, it's not there, and that was one thing that you could always count on with this team. Granted, they had better talent, but there's one thing you'd always count on, that it wouldn't beat itself, and now you can't count on that. You can certainly make the argument that the Steelers outlost them last week. Then the Patriots, beat the Steelers. But who does that blame ultimately fall on? It has to fall on the coaches. It has to, because there's
question.
Yeah. I just the whole thing boggles the mind. I know that Bill said earlier this week or yesterday, or maybe it was earlier today. The days are running together now. That they tried to keep Malik, but honestly, how hard did they really try if they didn't even play the guy?
I know that's true too, from not just Bill, from outside sources. But keeping Malik is putting him on the roster.
Right.
It's not having him like a ping pong ball bouncing between the practice squad and elevations to the roster and back and forth and back and forth. And then when you have him on the roster, he sits the whole game. What's the point? I just don't understand the point.
I don't understand why they even, picked the guy up and brought him in. If Bill is so anti, quote unquote, athlete at quarterback, why did you bring him in the first place?
Right.
I don't get it. They didn't even try to develop him, at what he undoubtedly is probably best at. I've heard people from Louisville who I've known for a long time, Karen. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, this kid was willing to stick it out here because, they showed him the money at the start, and they seemed committed to him. So he kept coming back. He was cut. Was released before training camp, came back. He was released during the season, re-signed. We're at week 14 now, and another team comes calling. Of course he's going to leave at this point.
Yeah, he's going to get a chance to.
Because there was no direction for him.
Right.
There was no future for him here because he kept getting mixed signals.
And at the very least, he's got a somewhat direction in Baltimore because he can go play with Lamar Jackson, who he played with actually for 1 year at Louisville. And I've heard people from Louisville tell me they thought that Malik Cunningham was actually more talented overall than Lamar was in school.
Yeah.
That's the shocking thing to me.
I also have one quarterback coach, somebody who trains quarterbacks, tell me Malik had the best arm of any of the quarterbacks in the Patriots arsenal, too. But we never saw it.
How could we possibly know that when we don't see it?
Right.
I don't know.
Again, and we're not sitting here saying that Malik Cunningham was going to be the second coming of Lamar Jackson. We're not saying that.
Nope.
But we just didn't have any more idea after that one brief appearance
in a preseason game.
That was it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the most unfortunate aspect of it all. You had plenty of opportunity to get that done, and you never pulled the trigger. And
for a team, it's not like they were in the playoff hunt.
I know.
And didn't want to, risk playing a young player like that to see what he could do. And it's not like they were. Look, this was the time for them to see what these guys could do. Get these guys out there. Get a handle on your roster. Get your handle on everybody that you have.
Yeah.
So that somebody will know going forward what to do with everybody.
Do the Patriots have anybody in charge of quality control? Because I would say no, they don't.
Yeah. No.
Can't. Because quality control is supposed to pay attention to these little details. Hey, you know what, guys? Yeah. We haven't gotten him a package this year. We haven't done this. We haven't done that. And I don't get it. Especially when you're, 2-0. I just, it doesn't make any sense. And yet, through it all, this team fought through, had a great start offensively last week against the Steelers, and ended up holding on for dear life at the end, but they did enough to win the game, probably because the Steelers might be as maligned as they are at this stage of the season, and the Patriots just haven't had the luck, I guess, that's required to be able to get over the top. But they did enough to win the game last week, which kind of makes me intrigued for this week because it looks like the Chiefs are starting to spiral downward a little bit.
Yeah, they've lost 2 straight. Their quarterback lost his mind at the end of the last game. Andy Reid even lost his mind a little bit too. So
he's too worried about stealing those chicken nuggets.
Yeah, they've become a bit unhinged.
Yeah.
But by the same token, I would expect after what happened that you will see a better process and production from them coming into Foxborough, wanting to right the ship because, again, they have something to lose.
Yes, they do.
Denver's now crept up to within a game of the lead. They've lost out in terms of seeding. They might have. Oh my goodness, they might have to play on the road this year. So I think I don't think they're as good as they've been, but they're still good enough, to be able to beat a 3-10 team.
Should be able to. And by the way, how about the challenge of the next 2 weeks, if you look at it big picture here, between the Chiefs and the Broncos? I mean, and never would have thought that the Bronco game was going to mean anything, but it's certainly going to mean a lot, apparently, to the Broncos when it does roll around in a couple of weeks. And if you really want to measure where you are as a team with the players that you have, next 2 weeks should at least provide us with a clue as to, all right, is the foundation really here, or does the whole thing need to be blown up?
Well, yeah, I would think you would want to find those things out, but Coach Belichick is playing to win. He's not playing to find out answers for the future. And who knows if his future is still here. So it's almost like people are at cross purposes.
Yeah.
John.
Yes, correct. That's the question that everybody wants to know the answer to. And the longer that it dangles out in front of us, the more perturbed he's going to get, as he was earlier today, and the more frustrated fans and others are going to be, and the more indignant reporters are going to be and asking him the same stuff, and it's just going to spiral downward. There has to be some kind of a conclusion here, one way or the other, even if it's Mr. Kraft, Robert, saying we're going to talk at the end of the season, and he hadn't even done that yet.
Except I think, letting people know that. I mean, that's typically the course of action. That's usually how it goes. Mm-hmm. They have a sit down. They go over to Davio's at the end of the season, and they sit right. and they chat. Mm-hmm. But the problem is when you lose 5 straight, you fall into a 2-10 hole, mm-hmm. And speculation is running rampant. It's tough to keep that all together.
Right. It certainly is. Very, very hard. Do you feel like the players are still playing for Bill?
I do. I think, the defense in particular, and the defense is his baby, right? Mm-hmm. They haven't, I think listening to Jelani Tavai today, talk about, they lost Matthew Judon, they lost Christian Gonzalez, 2 important pieces to that defense, mm-hmm. and they've been hell-bent on showing and proving that they could handle that. And granted, they've been playing Washington and Indy and Pittsburgh, some of the worst offenses, aside from them. Mm-hmm. But you still have to give them credit for the effort they've shown and still getting after it, and especially the defense, going all out in these games to win those games. I have to, yes, they make a ton of money, but I still have to give them credit for not, falling off the ship.
Yep. I'm right. I'm right there. I think the one thing that we could start, looking at as we sort of, begin to, and we've been looking, I guess, a little bit toward next year already for the last month or so. But at the same time, the one thing that I think you can see, and I noticed today reading in a couple of sports business journals, that because of the revenue coming into the NFL, it's quite likely that when they set the salary cap for next year, sometime in the next month or so, that the Patriots are going to have more money to deal with on the cap than even they know about today. I mean, the cap could go up another $10 to $15 million a year, which could mean an extra player or two somewhere, depending on how you figure it all out. And so, wow, does this put the pressure on you for next year to bring people in here that know how to play?
Right. I mean, we saw a couple years ago, they had the cap space, and they went on a splurge like we hadn't seen them go on.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine to go on a splurge, but you have to pay the right players, you know?
Sure.
And they had a couple of misses in there.
They did.
That didn't help them offensively. And so whoever's calling the shots, whoever's making those picks, whoever's deciding who to spend the money on, they have to be right. You know, you can't have Jonnu Smith. You can't have Nelson Aguilar.
Nope.
If you're going to pay all that money out, if you're going to pay big money contracts, you need to hit with those players.
Yeah.
If you're going to get out of this hole.
Yeah. Well, the only way you can get out of the hole more quickly than you know the traditional way is through free agency. That's the one thing that this sport does afford you. And yet, you know, you would think the Patriots would be the one team that could get themselves out of a hole quicker than others just based on track record. But it seems the Patriots have fallen into the same malaise that have kept programs and teams like the Jaguars and others and the one, you know, the former Bengals, the pre-Joe Burrow Bengals and things like that to keep them down just because they're expected to be down. The Patriots don't ever, and I'm afraid that they're getting to be close, they don't ever want to be one of those teams that, we can beat the Patriots just because they're the Patriots. They've never been that really since the days of the old AFL. Or you could certainly make an argument, all right, maybe in the early days of the new NFL after the merger, you know, somewhere in the 70s and maybe in the late 80s after the first Super Bowl appearance. But I'm sort of waxing poetic here, I guess, a little bit. The idea behind that, you know, you can be a have-not when you've been a have for so long is something that is taking a little bit of time to get used to. But I think we know how to arrive back where you used to be. The problem is understanding why the team doesn't see that. The organization doesn't see that, not the way that we see it. I mean, you and I have been around the beaten paths here enough to recognize what it normally takes for a team to be competitive, especially in the modern day era of NFL. You've got to be able to play. You've got to be able to run this offense. You've got to have a mobile quarterback. I mean, all the above. These are all things that you should have.
And they don't.
Yes, they did. And I'm wondering if it's not because of the coach. Is he still too stuck in his ways?
Yeah, that's what would seem to be the case. I mean, he's been defense first always because that's his bread and butter. That's what he coaches. That's where his genius lies in defending.
Yeah.
And he hadn't had to really worry about the offense because he had the greatest quarterback of all time on the other side.
Right. Now that he's had to worry about offense, yeah.
Right. Well, and Brady allowed him to, I'm not saying every year, but to get away with having less on that side as opposed to more.
Yeah. He's been able.
But what happened was when Brady got older, you know, Brady said, "Look, I can't be Superman all the time. You got to give me some weapons here." And it didn't happen.
Nope. And it still hasn't happened, and to be determined if it will ever happen. Karen, always good to talk to you. Thanks for a little bit of time today. I appreciate it.
Sure, anytime.
You got it. Thank you. Karen Guregian, the one and only, longtime beat writer, columnist, covering the Patriots, now for MassLive.com, joining us here on the show. We'll have we'll get into the Kansas City Chiefs coming up in a bit. I want to remind you, Patriots fans, if you want to see Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV, go to buyatoyota.com. It's Toyota's official website for deals from the official vehicle of the New England Patriots. Toyota, let's go places. Speaking of going places, let's go to North Carolina, somewhere on the highways and byways, where if you're not careful, he will run over you. Eldred in North Carolina. What's up, Eldred?
Hey, Mr. Legend, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm off today. I'm
not
good. Running over nobody yet, but I'm driving in that Camaro though. But I'm at home now.
All right.
But,
I like it. I like it. That's good. All right. I'm glad that you're off today from a normal haul. What's your take on all this stuff that we've been talking about here, especially with Malik?
Me, I never saw the guy play and everything, but it's like I said before. We don't have nobody that develop anybody. You got nobody develop a good quarterback no more, wide receivers,
right?
You know, or we just don't have them.
Right.
Troy Brown, like I said, wide receiver, he flunked him. He's flunking. And Malik, I don't know about, his skill set, but I at least would have gave him a shot because after that preseason game, when he made that throw and that guy dropped the ball in the end zone, the prettiest throw, right? I'm like, maybe he might have something. You never know. But you want to work him as quarterback instead of wide receiver instead of quarterback.
Right.
You never know until you try it. So you know what's going to be funny though? If when he gets to Baltimore, he's already in Baltimore, and they develop him a little bit, and he come out and play like maybe not none this year, but next year, and you see a mindset, that skill set, you can say, well, darn, they go back to that compound GM again.
Well, and I can't argue that because I personally believe he's going to be back in somewhat familiar surroundings. With a former teammate of his in Lamar Jackson, there's similar types of quarterbacks, and he's going to want to show that he belongs. And my guess is that he's going to earn some playing time. At least I would think that the Ravens will put him on the field to see what they got. Don't you think? The Patriots didn't even do that.
Yeah, they did. They did it at wide receiver, not at quarterback.
Okay. Well, yeah.
And the man couldn't play wide receiver. That's the funny part about it. He told, you can see it. He wasn't fluent, but that's Bill. And getting back to Miss Karen, it's the coach, sir. Like she said, he's defensive minded first, and he don't believe in all these high toys or whatever on offense. And I beat you 13-14 or 12-10, and that's good with him. But that's been involved for 30 years now, and he don't see it. Stuck in his way.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I've been saying that for years.
Well, I know you have. I know you have, and and I would tell you that it's probably a good thing that at least some of us would listen to you because I think that you're right now kind of spot on. Fact is that I think that maybe one of the biggest problems that the Patriots are having right now is that the coach is stuck in his ways. He's always done it this way. He's either not knowledgeable enough or unwilling, because he's just stubborn, to change it. And the result is, the result has sort of exacerbated itself. He's still got a pretty good defense. He's got the number 1 rated run defense in the NFL right now. And the defense, playing without two of its best athletes, arguably its two best athletes, is still managing to somehow slow people down. As Karen pointed out, though, you're going against arguably some of the weaker offenses in the league. But nevertheless, you're still holding the teams that are on your schedule. Can't do anything about the schedule. That's just what the NFL formula tells you have to play. So you've got that, but where you have a real problem is on the other side of the ball. And if you want to somehow fix that problem, what's the best way to do it? And there are many different ways they can go. And, of course, removing the coach is one of them. And I'm sure that will still be talked about for the next, few weeks until the regular season is over. And I know that there have been some that, are already reporting that, Bill's going to be gone at the end of the year. And frankly, I don't know.
Think so.
I don't think so either. And I would tell you that,
I don't think so.
Again, the reason why I don't think so is because of what I was told by ownership before the last Super Bowl championship. And then when he won number 6 for the franchise, it just, added to, what I knew after number 5 was that, this ownership was prepared to let Bill be CFL, coach for life, that he had earned that right based on what he had already brought to the franchise. And so I still believe that will be the case, but I think that there will be somehow a meeting of the minds. Bill, we need to get you some more help here because we can't score. And then the only way that this deal blows up, and I don't believe it's been decided yet, but the only way this deal blows up and Bill does not coach in New England next year is because he refuses to accept change.
That's what's going to happen one way or the other because he's been running his way, and he think like I said before, he think it's his system, not the player.
Right.
And then like the old adage go, coaches coach, players play. And if you ain't got the players, I don't care. Like I've been saying, you're just a coach holding a clipboard. I don't care how great you are. But he don't see that. And then everybody kept wondering about Carolina. If they keep losing, they're going to be the first. No, they don't have a first-round pick this year. They gave it to Chicago. So what I'm afraid of, if he's here and we at number 2, I don't care if we need a quarterback or Marvin Harrison sitting right there, his butt going to trade down to get some more capital, try to build a team and get his players again, and we're going to be sitting in the same spot again next year. That's what scares me scared the holy, what out of me about that, because I don't think he's going to be here and don't pick the groceries, as Parcells used to say.
Yeah.
Right. If he can't pick the groceries, he's not going to be there.
Right.
You
Truth.
And he's not going to take advice from nobody else.
No, I don't think he will.
I can't believe he is very knowledgeable, but I can't believe the other year that Cole Strange is sitting there. You got your linebacker, you got your wide receiver, you got a corner sitting there, and you get a third-round guard go first pick, and that was on the scout.
Right.
It wasn't on him.
Right.
I never believed that.
Right.
I never believed that.
Right.
So that's what scares me about this right here. And Mr. Kraft, I put this out many times. Let me draft for you one time. You don't have to pay me. I guarantee you won't ask that GM to do anything else. I bet you. And it won't be all wide receivers either.
Give it to Eldred. Give it to Eldred. Let him go.
I could draft better than he can.
I like it.
Yeah.
You know what we'll have to do, Eldred? I think as we get to the end of the regular season here and we get into the off-season programming, I think that would be a good idea. I think you should, one of these shows, we should get you to tell us who you would pick and who you would trade for and who you'd go after in free agency. Maybe we'll play, you be the GM and we'll bring you on and let you kind of co-host it. What do you think?
It'd be fine. I already got 2 draft picks already in mind.
I'm sure you do.
Mac Jones for number 2.
Yep.
Trade Strange for 3. And
remember now, trades are very difficult to manufacture, even in make believe, because you got to have a dance partner,
trading partner.
Yeah.
But think about it this way though, Mr. Legend. If you do get a quarterback next year, you're gonna have two upset guys in that room, and Mac Jones gonna be one of them.
Oh yeah.
So I want that distraction there, so I have to get rid of.
Oh yeah.
Kind of even if I have to sell him for a 3rd or a 4th.
Fully aware of that. Fully aware of that.
Yes, sir.
Eldred, you're a good man. Talk to you soon, my man.
Yes, thank you.
You got it. Eldred in North Carolina. Not in his truck today, in his Camaro today, but not in his truck today. I have to see that. You think it's red? I should have asked him. Got to be a red Camaro, right?
It's got to be red.
Yeah, I can't see Eldred in any other color but red. I just can't. I don't know. We got to ask him. We got to ask him that.
Red feels like a North Carolina color.
It kind of does, even though I think of Tar Heel blue when I think of North Carolina, right? So I don't know. Just me, I suppose. All right, we have the issue of the Chiefs, obviously coming in on Sunday rather than Saturday, or excuse me, Monday, I should say. Seems like it. I'm all flummoxed because of the Army-Navy game last week and the Patriots playing on Thursday, and I'm like, what day is today? Are we playing football today? Jesse Newell covers the Chiefs for the Kansas City Star. Kind enough to give us a couple of moments here inside the playbook. Hey, Jesse, John Rook here in Foxborough. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me.
Sure. I don't know if you kind of feel like you're in a little bit of Never Never Land as well, because the Chiefs have kind of stubbed their toes over the last couple of weeks. So can you give us a sense of some of the angst or some of the hand-wringing or teeth gnashing that might be going on in Kansas City right about now?
Well, I think I'm talking to a perfect fan base here, right? Because,
we understand what angst is, that's for sure.
30 other teams don't understand what it's like to have a Tom Brady or a Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And, oh, my gosh, boy, your problems are real bad. You have one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time on your team, and maybe you're only 8-5 instead of 10-2 or whatever, you know what I mean? So, but that's sort of where the Chiefs are, and I do think we saw something a little bit different from them this past week where, we saw Andy Reid very publicly call out the officials on the procedural part of the offside penalty. We saw Patrick Mahomes on the sideline. He's usually not like this. So, yeah, it's crazy. It feels like a fork in the road for this team. And to their credit, most people in the locker room, what they were talking about, they were all sort of galvanized in the same direction, but there is some underlying frustration here with how they played. And this is not a team that usually loses 2 straight, and it's not a team that usually loses 4 out of 6. And so the Patriots are meeting up with the Chiefs at a very interesting time. But like I said, the expectations around here are so sky high because of what Patrick Mahomes is, because of what Andy Reid is. I just do feel kind of different talking to a Patriots fan base because I think they lived it with Tom Brady, and people on the outside don't really get the expectations how they get raised like that, but that's sort of what the Chiefs are in the midst of right now.
100%. 100%, which is why it's kind of interesting that the two teams ended up on the schedule against each other this week, because I think Chiefs fans could probably learn a little something from Patriots fans and expectations right now, and it's very hard to measure up to those expectations no matter what the cause is. Do you get a sense now that the cause for the stumble, let's just call it a stumble because, well, it gives certainly the Chiefs the benefit of the doubt here. There's still plenty of talent, I think, on the team. But do you get a sense that the stumble is because of coaching or is it because of player execution? Is a little bit of both? Where do you get the sense that this team is not playing up to its previous level?
So here's what's fascinating, guys. Almost everybody you talk to is going to say the receivers, and I don't necessarily disagree with them. But if you bring up the roster from last year and look at the receivers that they had, and you bring up the roster with the receivers they have this year, there's only one difference. That's Juju Smith-Schuster leaving for New England, and the Chiefs drafting Rashee Rice in the second round, who has been probably better than they could have expected. So it's sort of fascinating to compare these two things because last year the big question with the Chiefs was what? Can they win a Super Bowl with these wide receivers? They did, right? I mean, they proved they could. Patrick Mahomes was playing at a level 10 out of 10 and making everybody around him better. It's just been tougher this year, and I think there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, I think a couple guys are not performing as well as last year, and, this is going to be kind of barely above a whisper, but Travis Kelce is not playing like he normally does, and Father Time comes for all of us, and it sure seems like this year it's just...
He's also got a major distraction.
Well, and again, I don't know. I mean, it kind of depends on your perspective on that. That's something that fans have pointed to and that you can point to, but at the same time, he first game of the year he had a knee injury and kind of rushed back from it. It doesn't... The broken tackle numbers are way down. You know what I mean? And he still gets open. He still reads defense as well, but it's just not quite that burst that we've seen from him in the past. And then a guy like Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who in the AFC Championship game just went nutso last year when they had basically no other receivers, he's not living up to expectations and has really failed to be on the same page as Patrick Mahomes for most games this year. So it's kind of fascinating to look at this because, like I said, if you go man by man on the roster, there's only one change. It's Juju Smith-Schuster for Rashee Rice, and Rashee Rice has played pretty well. But you combine that with Patrick Mahomes getting frustrated, not really being on the same page as the receivers more this year than last year. Plus, they have some tackle issues. Left tackle and right tackle have been a question mark for them this year, and they have not solidified those the way that they had solidified them in the past. And all of a sudden, you're left with a quarterback who is trying to do a lot and potentially trying to do too much. And the Chiefs' offense just doesn't quite look like it has in the past. Yeah,
I'm just going to say, I get the overall impression looking at the Chiefs as I've watched their games the last couple of weeks as well. I just kind of think he's trying to do too much. I'm not sure he has the support personnel that he had in the last, couple of years when this team was going to be the next best thing since sliced bread. And that when Mahomes tries to do too much, and I think, Patriot fans will remember this of Tom Brady as well. It just doesn't work. There has to be, I think, a well-rounded system of depth somewhere, in the arsenal for the quarterback to be able to operate at a relatively comfortable level. And I think it's one of the reasons why the Patriots completely and totally stripped the gears of Mac Jones, because he was having to play, off of his back foot the entire time, and he ends up throwing picks. So I think there's really something to the whole, hey, you got to have weapons around your quarterback no matter who your quarterback is, even if it's Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, or if you're Patrick Mahomes, this is tough, but you sort of have to rewrap your mind and kind of wipe the slate clean, because what they were so good at last year is he hit his back foot and somebody'd be open, and they played the check down underneath game, and they would take the 8 or 9 free yards, and he would trust those guys to make plays, even if they had messed up the time before. But if you're going back and rewatching film on some of this, I mean, I think there was a really good example. If you go back after the offsides play, and obviously the Chiefs had lost their minds by then. I mean, they had sort of checked out, but the 2nd and 15 play, Justin Watson runs wide open across the field for potentially 25, 30 yards. The Chiefs are right back in the game if they have this. But Mahomes drops back in his drop back about 11 yards. And there's no tackle that can help you out when you drop back 11 yards. But he doesn't trust him, so he feels like he has to go make a second play. And then he doesn't hit his back foot and throw the ball. And then he doesn't trust his receivers on that. So, again, just a tiny example of this, of what's going on here, which is Patrick Mahomes is still one of the best players on the planet, and he still makes throws at times, like one across his body to Kelce last game on a 3rd and long, where you're like, I'm not sure anybody else can do that.
Yeah.
But too often, there are these moments where it's like, because he doesn't trust the tackles, he gets out of his footwork. He drops back a little bit further than he should, and then there's pressure, and like you can't blame the tackles for the pressure when you're not in the right spot yourself. And so, again, this is not to blame Patrick Mahomes. Do not get me wrong here, but we've seen him play at a 10 out of 10 level, and when that happens, the Chiefs are really good no matter the pieces around him. Now you're seeing 8.5 or 9. And when he doesn't trust those pieces around him, it just doesn't quite work as well. And he's searching. He thinks he needs to scramble a little bit more. He thinks he needs to find receivers that are going to catch it because the one didn't catch it the play before. So it's just not quite in sync yet. And they're getting closer, and a lot of this is self-inflicted, but they just have not come through it enough opportune times that this is how these losses pile up. And as we know, like last week, the Bills, they're a play away. But that play doesn't happen, and the official throws the flag on the one play where they hoped he didn't. So it just hasn't quite come together yet. I don't think it's hopeless. I just think that they are just a tick off, and that's what it gets to when you start losing games. Is you're a tick off, and you feel like you need to do a little bit too much.
Right, and when you do a little bit too much, that's when the problem usually exacerbates itself. It usually just it's almost like a boulder rolling downhill. It gains steam until it completely flattens somebody down at the bottom. And I got that impression at the end of the game, with the offsides penalty that took out the touchdown last week against the Bills. I'm like, whoa! I number one, I had a hard time believing that was called. But number two, when you look at the still frame, shoot, that looked like offsides to just about everybody. So, I don't know if it's a lack of attention to detail, if it's something that they're just anxious about. I don't know what it is, but why do these things come about? Because people try too hard, and they usually don't have success when they try too hard.
Yeah, and again, talking to you guys, I feel like it's kind of a safe space here, but
that's a good way to put it. Safe space. Come join us on the dark side.
Yeah, well, Chris Jones said it today. We just talked to him here at Arrowhead, and it sounds weird to 30 other fan bases out there, right? But like Chris Jones says, when he's talking about the Chiefs, says we're not used to losing 2 straight. You know what I mean? Like the Chiefs aren't used to losing 3 out of 5. They're not used to losing 4 out of 6. They're not used to losing at home. But that's and so when things for so long, guys, I covered KU football for 13 years, Kansas football. And they're getting turned around with Lance Leipold now. And maybe they should have kicked me off the beat a long time ago. Maybe that was the turnaround.
That's one way of looking at it.
but I covered them, and I covered KU basketball. And the biggest difference to me was when things went wrong for KU football, they expected them to continue to go wrong. With KU basketball, when things go right, KU would expect them to go right. Like if West Virginia's up by 16 in Allen Fieldhouse and one guy dribbles it off his knee out of bounds, you're like, oh, there you go. West Virginia blew their chance. KU's going to come back. They're going to have a 20-0 run now. Everybody expects that to happen. It's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think right now with the Chiefs, for so long they've expected things to go right? They expect to make the play at the end of the games. The Chiefs don't have a fourth-quarter comeback this year, and that's what Patrick Mahomes has been best at throughout his entire career. You always felt like, oh, my God, the Buffalo gave Patrick Mahomes 13 seconds. What are they doing? You know what I mean? Like they gave him too much time, and now they don't come back in those games. They don't have this magic elixir that they always used to have. So I think that's sort of what we're talking about here is that the Chiefs have gotten to a place where because they have not come back in these games, because they have not shown that comeback ability or that ability to win these close ones, there's frustration because it's not what they're used to. Yeah. It's not how things normally turn out for them. Things usually work out, and this year, for whatever reason, they're not working out in close games. And so I think that's where you see frustration. There's obviously Chris Jones on the sideline with an assistant coach where they spike the tablet. All these sorts of things happening, and even Patrick Mahomes going his tirade on the sideline. I think part of that is frustration with the team and them not performing the level that they expect. But that's kind of the place that the Chiefs are in right now. So I do think this is a fascinating game because it feels like what they did in the locker room after last game is totally different than what they've done in any other game that I've covered them because they expect things to go right, and things have not gone right lately. So does that galvanize them? Does it not? Does it start to splinter them? I don't know, but I just know I have not seen this from the Chiefs before, so this next game is going to be a fascinating one to track.
Absolutely. Really good stuff, Jesse. So let me ask you, why don't the Chiefs have a running game? What's the primary reason that the running game has not allowed Patrick to be more of himself?
Yeah, I got a good stat for you. So if you look at expected points added or expected points added per attempt, since the bye week, the Chiefs are number 1 in the NFL in expected points added per rush attempt.
Wow.
So they've been playing well, and their interior 3 have really stepped up. That was the strength of their team coming in. to the season, and they kind of were a little bit shaky early on, but since the bye week, they've been lights out. So that's even kind of more interesting about this whole thing is you would say, oh, my gosh, what's wrong with the run game? Why is this not helping him?
Mm-hmm.
The run game is helping him.
Yeah.
And teams still are trying to respect the pass offense, and Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, because over time we know from studies, passing is way more important than running. It is, but it sure is helpful if you can run the ball, and the Chiefs lately haven't been able to run the ball, even with Isaiah Pacheco out of their last game, and he didn't return to practice this week, so that could be a nice potential bonus for the Patriots if he doesn't go in there, because he's obviously kind of the emotional leader for the Chiefs. He popped up after tackles. He kind of screams after runs. He kind of gets them going emotionally. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was fine for them last week, probably better than expected, but he's not the same dynamic runner that Isaiah Pacheco is. But that has been fascinating as well, because they actually, with their pass game, have all the advantages, even more advantages than you expect, because teams have to look at this run game and go, man, if we don't respect this enough, then Joe Tooney and Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith are going to road grade us down the field.
Yeah.
And the Chiefs have had some of that lately. Still an Andy Reid team, so they're going to throw it more than they pass it. That's still smart in football terms. It just has been fascinating to kind of track the offensive struggles, if you will, because they've been doing all this with a very good run game in recent weeks, maybe an underrated run game, and still the passing game hasn't been able to come around. So
Sure.
I'm sure that's what's frustrated Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes as they've gone along the stretch where, again, they've won one of the last 4 games.
So do you think it's just as simple as really just seeing a little bit more consistency there to be able to, I don't know, find some of that magic at the end of the game? You mentioned already that this team doesn't have a fourth quarter comeback this year, and I don't know. I would assume then if they could get off to a fast start, and this has been a problem that's plagued the Patriots, for the last couple of years, they can't get off to a fast start at all. But if the Chiefs got off to a faster start, that might help them in the long run where they wouldn't have to come back at the end?
Yeah, and you're targeting something that's a big conversation point this week, because the Chiefs have been down double digits in 3 straight games in the first half. That happened to the Raiders, and the Chiefs are able to come back. It obviously happened, this past week against the Bills, and so this has been a thing for the Chiefs to have to come back from these deficits. It is a weird thing to talk about because, if I'm just looking at this big picture, and like what's ailing the Chiefs is like kind of hard to put your finger on. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's probably a place you want to be, because I think the narrative around here is like so opposite of what it's normally been, because it's like you always anticipated and assumed when it came down crunch time at the end of the game, you were going to be really happy Patrick Mahomes was your quarterback because he would make that play. And like the narrative right now around here is like the Chiefs are going to find some way to screw it up. You know what I mean? Like one play lined up wrong, whatever it is, like they just haven't made that play. And how do you fix that? I don't know. You just make the play. Or like in this past game, if the official doesn't throw the flag, which, we've seen the Dan Orlovsky videos now out there, it seemed like Kadarius Toney was lined up in that particular position. Many other plays in the game. Like, what's our narrative this week with the Chiefs? They made the play. Travis Kelce made a Hall of Fame sort of moment, all these sorts of things. So, it's a weird spot to be. The Chiefs, to me, are a step back from what they were last year when they won the Super Bowl. But at the same time, I feel like the rest of the AFC is a step back. There is no 2022 Buffalo Bills. There is no 2022 Cincinnati Bengals. And as far as their chances go, I probably like their chances about as much as any other team in the AFC. They have to fix sort of a mindset and a belief that they can do it. And you're talking about a team that won the Super Bowl last year after they were down double digits in the first half to the Eagles. So it seems like everything is still in front of them. It's just kind of a weird place to be in this schedule where they're losing more than they expected. They're not making plays they expected. And they also have, again, frustration at this moment that they're not having things go as planned or as they normally go around these parts. So it seems really fixable to me. But it's up to them to fix it, and it's up to them to win one of these games. And so we'll see what happens moving forward. But the schedule does lighten up here in the next 4 weeks. Maybe they can resolve some of these issues and get back to what they were playing. And if that does happen, I wouldn't be too surprised, because some of their Achilles heels are things that are kind of more vibes-based than they are just total, you have this on your roster that can't be fixed. You still got Patrick Mahomes. You still got Travis Kelce. You still got Andy Reid. a lot of those things still seem like they can be ahead of the Chiefs here coming down the stretch at the end of the season.
A lot, and I'm chuckling here because a lot of this I've heard over the last 3 or 4 years. It's amazing the similarities, I think, what the Chiefs are going through and what the Patriots have also gone through. And it's just, and I think this is probably just a byproduct of, a team being up at a certain level, expectations grow, and then all of a sudden when teams finally begin to somehow catch up with you through your own attrition or through their film study or through their own talents or through the breaks, however it is, it's a difficult thing to handle, and the adjustment period is hard, really hard, on both sides.
I'll tell you guys this, too. One of the things I've heard this week a lot is sort of the template for this season has been like the past Patriots, where, okay, Tom Brady didn't have many weapons around him, didn't have many receivers. You keep yourself in the game, you keep your head above water, you get to the playoffs, and then you go win one that people don't expect you to 4 weeks earlier.
Yeah,
and that's sort of the big game plan for the Chiefs, is just that they put themselves in the game. I mean, they weren't supposed to win it last year. The Bills were better than them last year, but then the Bills lost. And then they get there and they make the plays in the big game, and you win it. And so I think if you're Brett Veach, this has sort of been kind of the big picture mindset is maybe you're not the best team every year, but their goal is for the next 10 years
to be in the running.
Give yourself a chance.
Yeah, give yourself a shot.
You're in the running.
Right.
And so that's sort of where they're at right now is, are they the best team this year? Probably not. Do they have a puncher's chance of winning the Super Bowl again?
Sure.
Yes. And they have the youngest defense in the NFL, or maybe the second youngest defense in the NFL. They've drafted really well. They're going to give themselves a chance this year and the next year and the next year and the next year. And with Patrick Mahomes, you give yourself enough sticks to the dance, you're going to win a few of them. And potentially that's kind of where the Chiefs are this year. As bad as it looks to the fans right now, they're still going to give themselves a puncher's chance, and they're not sacrificing the future to be able to do that.
Jesse Newell, the Kansas City Star. Jesse, thanks so much for the time and the information. Good stuff at all. Appreciate it, and be safe on the travel this way.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it, guys. I appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you. Jesse Newell, at Jesse, Jesse Newell, Newell. That's how you spell it. Find him on X there and follow his stuff. Some really candid comments I thought that he's making there, and the comparisons between the Chiefs now and the Patriots of, well, not just this year, but even a few years ago, especially in the aftermath of Tom Brady leaving for Tampa Bay, and even when Brady was still a quarterback, and the Patriots didn't win every game by 20 points. It was just expectations are really hard to overcome, and the other issue is that everybody usually has somebody on the team that makes it difficult for the opponent. I mean, there's a lot of talent on all teams in the league. You could certainly make an argument that the Patriots have less of it than the contenders because, quite frankly, how else do you go 3-10 in a year when the AFC is this wide open? I mean, let's face it. This is the one year that you wanted to be in the hunt, and you're 3-10. Why? Why are you 3-10? You don't have talent. And the talent you do have has not been coached to its potential. That's really it. You're not far. I said this a couple of weeks ago, wrote this column on Full Press Coverage, that, I know this is going to go right up the backside of a lot of fans, but fact is the Patriots really aren't that far away. And you can accuse me of waving pom-poms if you want. Okay, that's fine. But I'm going to tell you, number one, we set the president already here today by telling you the Patriots have the number one rated run defense in the NFL. Now, okay, whatever that's worth in a pass-happy era, fine. But then why are we still having 6-0 and 3-0 finals in the NFL if defense doesn't mean something? Is it because the offenses just suck? I would say no. I would tell you that, well, yeah, they probably do sometimes. But at the same time, it's lack of execution. And defenses are catching up. They always catch up. Look up and down the history books through the NFL. Russell Baxter will tell you this. Defenses always catch up until the next thing happens. The next thing hasn't happened yet. Defenses are catching up to 5 wide and everything else. Why? Defenses are getting faster. Defenses are getting more agile. Linebackers are covering guys coming out of the backfield. I mean, it took the Patriots a while to figure that out, didn't it? We've talked about that for the last several years. Anthony Jennings has been a find this year. Juwan Bentley has trained himself to be a mobile linebacker. even though he's still more of a thumper, but they got it. Now, the Patriots have made great strides, I think, defensively. I got no issues on that side of the ball. 0 right now. I just wish they could cover a little bit better. I think they're too soft especially when they're playing man, they're way too soft. When they're zone, they're way too soft. They don't want to get up and body anybody. And I think that's where, J.C. Jackson, has largely been effective when he was with the team in the past, is that he took chances. Yeah, he got burnt on 1 or 2, but he also made plays. And this is something that the defense right now is lacking, playmaking. On offense, you just need talent. And they've done a really poor job of evaluating that talent. I think we all recognize that. We all see it. You have to hope that those that are, in a position to make decisions, make the right decisions starting this next year when it comes to drafting and when it comes to selecting free agents, of which the Patriots should be able to have their pick. The issue, of course, is New England just isn't as attractive a spot to go to as it once was. How can the Patriots make it attractive again? Part of that may lie in Bill Belichick himself. If he's going to coach, who is he bringing in for players to work with on that side of the ball? Is it still Bill O'Brien? Is it a new wide receiver coach? What is it? What are they doing? That's going to be a huge telling factor, I think, when it comes to free agency and other players looking for new deals considering New England. Huge factor. Our friend Claire is with us. Hi, Claire.
Hey, Ricky. Hey, Maureen.
Hey, girl.
What's happening?
Same old.
Yeah, and you have, I don't know. I kind of like to hear your thoughts on what we've been talking about. Malik in particular, just because, here's a guy that certainly seemed to have a package of talent that was not like or was very much unlike what others possess, and yet they never took advantage of it to the point where we could see accurately what they had with him. And there should be, I think, a certain amount of frustration amongst a lot of people in realizing that you might have squandered someone who has some ability that, frankly, is rare in the NFL these days.
Well, there was a couple of points that you made just after speaking to the KC guy that I sort of had some sort of answers for.
Okay.
But with regards to the Malik situation, I think the way that my opinion, my perspective of it was, if they thought he was going to work in the system, they'd have used him by now. Now, that could be, like you've mentioned, a lack of being able to utilize the talent, a lack of being able to coach the talent. Those are the grey areas that we may never know because we don't always see what's going on behind the scenes. But in regards to looking at it from a fan perspective outward in, to me it feels like, as I said, if they thought he would work, they would have used him by now. They would have had a go in this situation where they're, 3-10. They'd have thrown him in to see. To me, it feels like they looked at him during the time that they had him in and thought, you know what, we want to try and get him as a wide receiver. That didn't work.
Okay.
Well, maybe he's not really what they wanted, what they could use. So
sure. I think that's probably the right answer, to be honest with you. They just don't think he'll work in the system. But they didn't even try, to create a package that they could use to see what they had, number one. And number two, if they didn't think he was going to work in the system, why the hell did they bring him in and pay him that money as a UDFA?
Maybe they thought that they could. That's the thing. Don't forget they brought in Bill O'Brien this season as well. So maybe when they looked at it, they looked at the larger picture of, we want this mobility, we want this kind of different quarterback. Mm-hmm. Let's bring him in. Let's add that, a skill set to the roster, to the practice squad. Let's see how we can utilize it. And we've got this OC, so let's see how he can utilize him. And unfortunately, it was one of those things that didn't really work. Now, the other side of it could be, he was a really talented guy, and they just didn't use him properly, and it's all completely on them. But that's not my opinion or viewpoint of it. That could be the truth, mm-hmm. But because I'm not sort of thinking, because they know way more football than I can ever imagine to think about and stuff like that, that I look at it and think, well, they're going to know way better than I am anyway. Mm-hmm. So sort of my trust in them is, they're way smarter than me. They're way better at football than I could ever be. So I kind of believe that they didn't see it couldn't work, so they moved on. And that's just my opinion of it. I know a lot of people will be screaming like, oh, that's so naive or whatever. And I get it. That's just my viewpoint as a fan of that situation. And I'm happy that I'm a little bit happy, like Evan was on PU a couple of days ago. It's like, well, at least we can't be calling for him now. At least we're over that bit. We're on to the next sort of situation.
Right. Do you think Bill should, or do you think Bill, maybe I should say, could realistically end up with another team next year?
Oh, I don't. Oh, this is one of those things, isn't it? This is one of the big questions for Patriots fans.
Sure.
Do you want this coach gone? Do you think he should be gone?
See, I don't. I think I've been pretty straight with you on that one and with everybody else. Yeah. I mean, I can understand if they make the move like that. I can understand why. But if it were up to me to pull the trigger, I don't think I could do it, and I don't think I would want to do it. I think that I would want to give it a last shot unless Bill shut me down right to my face and said that will never happen. I can't do this, I can't do that, or I'm not going to do this. Then you don't have any choice but to make a move. But I don't know if he's really what we think he is. I don't think he wants to leave New England on a sour note where, his legacy is bothered, because Bill has always been an historical guy when it comes to pro football. And I think he realizes that, his reputation has already taken a beating. And I think that he would want to try to leave this place in better shape than where he found it. And right now, when he found it back in 1999-2000, it's about like it is right now.
See, the thing is, for me personally, I keep flip-flopping because I can see the side, like you're saying, and the nostalgia side and how good he is as a coach and why would we let that go sort of thing. Then you look at the other side of, well, look at what's happened, maybe the downfall the last few years. Maybe he is getting to that stage where he's a little bit too older for I hate saying that. I really hate saying that, but if he is at the situation where he'd be better off that he retired. And maybe we do need something fresh when it comes to head coaching, when it comes to offense, because things haven't quite been working. And if we do stay, remain under Bill Belichick, will we see a lot of the same people, a lot of the same situation? And do we really need that shake-up? And for me at the moment, particularly because it's still in the season as well, I'm struggling to look at it either side because it's such a difficult decision. I don't envy Kraft at all. If he ultimately has to make this decision, if it's not like up to Bill and things like that. So, but we've still got some football to go. So for me, it feels like kind of putting a pin in it and going, you know what, I'll deal with that at the end of the season. Yeah. Right now.
Sure.
It's too complex.
I know there's still a lot of football to be played, and I think depending on how the football goes over the next month, that could affect some of the decisions that you have to make on down the line.
And I have a point that I don't want to forget. I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but you were saying just before you took my call, there was two things that you said.
Okay.
In regards to the offense, you said that they had an issue choosing talent. Mm-hmm. But is it more they have an issue utilizing the talent on offense?
Yeah.
Is it more on the coaching side? Then they aren't picking the right players. They aren't able
to get the most out of the talent.
Of them,
yeah.
What they should. Because some of the players that they've brought in previously were quite good. Now, there's lots of, if but candy and nuts, and I know we're near to Christmas type thing, but it feels like some of them that they've brought in, they just haven't been able to use them properly. So I think some of it falls on the utilization rather than the actual talent itself.
No, that's a fair question. Yeah, that's a fair question. And it's probably a little bit of both. I would tell you that I'm not sure that they have enough talent on the offensive line, particularly at tackle. They have talent, I think, at guard. It's just young and inexperienced and has been abused a little bit this year. I would tell you that I think that they have some talent, probably not enough, on your favorite position at tight end. I would tell you that they have some talent and probably less of it at wide receiver than they really need to have. And the talent that they do have has kind of been banged up, and that's a whole, another story. So to me, I also think that they're underutilizing players on tight end and players on the line and players, at receivers. So I think it's a little bit of both, but it's an interesting question.
One more key thing that I thought of.
Okay.
When you said about bringing, what would be the pull for players to come to New England?
See, I don't know that.
And if
I
I have an answer.
Okay, shoot. What is it?
That's why I made a note. It's particularly the one side you can look at it, and I think that Bill Belichick within the industry still has some pull. I still think there's some players that would look and say, I would like to maybe end my career or have that notch in my career of working for Bill Belichick.
Might be.
Now,
if
Bill Belichick has gone, so we don't have that extra pull of, he's one of the greatest coaches of all time, I want to have him on my CV situation. It could be, the pull could be that this team is sort of, I suppose you could say it'll be in a rebuild once the coach has gone, because it will be rebuilding from its coaching staff upwards, and particularly if they, they're after new quarterback and stuff like that. So I suppose it's not out of, untoward to say that they would be going through some form of rebuild. And the one thing you could say is you could look at some players and be like, they would want to be part of the success story of rebuilding it from the ashes, following the downturn after the loss of Tom Brady, so that they had kind of on their status. Well, I was one of those players that helped rebuild that iconic team back into a dynasty team or an iconic team or a winning team.
I actually think that was Matt Judon's reason for coming here. I think that was part of Matt Judon's reason for coming here and signing with the Patriots. For that very reason, because of the legacy that the Patriots had carried. But now that means less, a few years more removed from that. Sure, I will absolutely buy the fact that there are some players out there in the NFL that respect and would love to, have working with Bill Belichick on their football resume, as you put it. But I would also tell you that I got to admit, I just don't know what his reputation carries, to an extreme, and the player that respects Bill, is that also a player the Patriots need? Because the Patriots need to choose players and draft to specific needs. What if all the wide receivers are like, oh crap, I don't want to go play there because Bill can't coach me?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
See, so that's the issue I think at hand. But I think that's
with my second point then.
No. I just listen. I think it's an interesting question. I'm not saying it's wrong. I definitely believe that there are those that would want to play. I just don't know if that's as attractive a lure as cold hard cash is nowadays.
Yeah, that was going to be my other comment. Is as much as they may wish to be part of the building from the ashes after Tom Brady and Bill Belichick had left the scene, so that it can be part of that experience or part of that history of the rebuild. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's going to be dollars, isn't it, as well? Yeah,
100%. That's right. Claire, you're a delight as always. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Of course.
To speak to you.
You too. Check her Claire Perspective podcast. Okay, make sure you do that on Pat's Propaganda and full press coverage. I know you can find it. Eldred told me he had a hard time finding it, but hopefully Eldred's been able to find it now, because I know he turns out to be a subject of conversation quite often on her pod, and I'm happy to be a part of that pod from time to time. Hey, Bridgestone is the official tire of the New England Patriots and is proud to partner with Sullivan Tire, New England's headquarters for quality Bridgestone tires. Visit sullivantire.com to find a location near you.
A real woman could stop you from drinking.
It has to be a real big woman.
It's time to go around the NFL with football guru Russell Baxter.
From now on, your name is Flounder.
On Patriots Playbook.
Flounder.
All right, Flounder, I got a good one for you here to start off, because we had a comment made earlier in the show about, how offenses have been all that, and that's certainly the rage over the last 10, 20 years with spread offense and everything. And yet I made the statement that all things in life and football are cyclical, because invariably through history, defense always catches up to offense, and then we get the next big thing on offense. Would you agree with that assessment, and are we that far away from the next big thing happening on offense?
it's almost like you're in my head. It's something. It is something I talk about a lot.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, John.
Yeah.
And you go from year to year here, and listen, you know this. The first major rule changes to open up the offense came back in 1978.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the Chuck rule basically came. If you got touched beyond the 5 yards, now sometimes it's enforced a little more than it is others and so on. But that was also when offensive linemen were allowed to extend their arms in terms of pass protection. That was also if an offensive player touched the ball and it went off his hands, another offensive player could catch it.
Mm-hmm.
A la the Immaculate Reception, which was so controversial because if an offensive player touched the ball, it couldn't be touched again unless it was by a defensive player.
Mm-hmm.
So all those helped open up the passing game dramatically. And teams took advantage of that, and now they take advantage of it even more. But the reason the league keeps on adjusting the offensive rules is it's usually taken the league's defenses maybe a year, maybe two, to offset those. And we've definitely seen that early in the season this year, and that combined with the fact that, training camps aren't as rigorous and so on. But for teams that are relying on their offense to get them to the playoffs and the Super Bowl, ask the Detroit Lions how that's working out right now.
Yeah.
Ask the Philadelphia Eagles how that's working out right now. You better bring some sort of, for you look at these Super Bowls the last couple years,
mm-hmm.
and, I've heard people comment about, Joe Burrow got the Bengals to the Super Bowl with a bad offensive line. And you know what? They're absolutely right. But you see, I'm kind of quirky that way because I thought the goal was to win the Super Bowl, not get to the Super Bowl. And I know I've kidded with you in the past about this, John, but who spent more time in the second half of Super Bowl 56 in the Cincinnati backfield, Joe Burrow, Von Miller, or Aaron Donald?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point, actually, yeah.
So you look at all these Super Bowls. Now, case in point, Philadelphia moved the ball up and down on the Chiefs' defense in the Super Bowl last year. They outgained them significantly.
Mm-hmm.
But the most costly play of the game was Jalen Hurts' fumble, which got returned for a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically enough, think about this. It was the only turnover the Eagles had in 3 postseason games.
And it cost them dearly.
Play,
yeah.
You will remember that play. The Eagles are up 14-7. They're moving down the field. It changed the whole feeling and the momentum of the game.
Yep.
And because the Eagles last year had 70 sacks in the regular season, but were middle of the pack against the run, what did the Chiefs do in the second half? They ran the football.
Mm-hmm.
Ran the football on Philadelphia. And it opened everything up. Patrick Mahomes, had a 28-yard run, which was a key part of the game. I think people forget this, at least some people do. Patrick Mahomes was Super Bowl MVP and didn't throw for 200 yards in the game last year.
See, I'd forgotten that too. I didn't even realize that, but you're right. Yeah, that's right.
So you better have, there's got to be some sort of semblance defense, and you've got to make a play. And these days it's more about takeaways. It used to be, we've seen very few, like the 2015 Broncos and the 2013 Seahawks, where they could do both. They could stop the run, they could take away the football, and they could get after the quarterback. Some teams are good at getting after the quarterback, doesn't necessarily translate into takeaways. So, that's why San Francisco, I think, has been as overpowering as they have. But then again, they've shown some leaks as well. And I know there's some injuries in the secondary and so on. So this is going to really be a strange battle of attrition coming down the stretch here and so on, because we have seen, and by the way, the back end of the schedule, not so much divisional games. There's a lot of loaded games as far as interconference matchups and some of the better teams playing with each other. But here's something to keep in mind, John, about getting to the playoffs and how everybody's making it really difficult right now. And this will be out later today.
Okay.
Okay, and first off, the words that the season ended today are not something I subscribe to.
No, I knew that. I knew that already. Right. Yes.
Right. So I'm looking at the current format right now in terms of the seeds, okay? For this point of reference. There are 7 teams in the AFC and 7 teams in the NFC. John, last week, 5 of the 7 teams in the AFC lost.
All right.
John, 3 of the 7 teams in the NFC lost.
Okay.
Okay, they're all still in the playoff picture, but how bad do you want it? Okay?
Right.
That's what you have to look at all the 7 and 6 teams we have. Okay?
A ton.
In fact, talk about hysterical. We have a triple header on Saturday. We have 7 and 6 Minnesota at 7 and 6 Cincinnati. We have 7 and 6 Pittsburgh at 7 and 6 Indianapolis.
Isn't that what the NFL wanted?
I don't know, but we have 7 and 6 Denver at 9 and 4 Detroit.
Yep.
So, who knows? Maybe both conferences might get a team in that isn't above 500. Okay, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but you saw teams last week with the opportunity to seize the moment, and there wasn't much seizing going on. Maybe some sneezing, but not seizing.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree with that one too. It's kind of odd that, the Patriots got back on the winning track this last week because they got off to such a fast start against the Steelers and kind of held on for dear life. The Chiefs, on the other hand, they took maybe another little step backward because they've lost 2 in a row for the first time in 3 out of 4 or whatever it is, 3 out of 5 for the first time in a long time. And so we've already made the analogy today that the Chiefs are kind of going through what the Patriots were going through toward the end of the Tom Brady era, and maybe even more as recently as a year or 2 ago, fighting for a playoff spot, because we can see some slippage. And I'm wondering if the slippage is really due to attention to detail, that you just can't maintain a certain level of intensity for very long, or if it's the lack of attention to detail by the coaching staff, or if it's just the players themselves and they just don't have as much talent as they once had when they were in their heyday a couple of years ago. And I've always said, I wonder if it's because, again, defenses just always find a way to catch up to offenses, no matter how dynamic that offense might be.
And I think one of the reasons they're able to catch up to it is because you do have, to me, too many teams that are quarterback dependent. Okay? So what was Bill Belichick's biggest thing? Take your best offensive player out of it. Okay? Well, in the league now, by the way, you're going through quarterbacks at a pretty rapid pace, by the way. Remember last year, 69 different starting quarterbacks around the league. This week, Minnesota is about to join Cleveland with a 4th different starting quarterback. Okay? So you're making it easy on defenses because in a lot of instances, if you just minimize what a quarterback does, okay?
Yep.
Some of these teams don't have running games to fall back on. Some of these teams don't have great defenses to fall back on. Okay? But if this is what you have wrought, if you are a one-dimensional football team. And we have seen instances of teams not have their quarterback and fail miserably. Now, then you have a team like Cincinnati who is not a one-dimensional team, and they don't depend on Joe Burrow as much as people would think they do, because they do have a running game. Even though the running game isn't successful, it doesn't mean that Zach Taylor doesn't use it. They also have an underrated defensive front.
Okay.
With Trey Hendrickson and so on. And their secondary took a lot of hits in free agency. I think that was more by design as far as, Jesse Bates, who's having a great year for the Falcons this year. But would it shock you to know that the last 2 weeks, the Bengals have played, the last 3 weeks, but now the last 2 weeks they played without Joe Burrow as well.
Right.
And they've scored 68 points.
Because they still have players. They still have support. I'm not sure how much support the other guys have. We've always said at this stage of the year, it's all about playing a war of attrition. He who has the most toys at the end is the one that usually wins in the NFL. And I think that's kind of proving itself to be true.
Well, listen, if your only toy is a slinky, you're in a lot of trouble.
Well, that's kind of what the Patriots are playing with right now. Slinkies,
Yes.
But even a slinky can be somewhat elusive. I'm not sure the Patriots have anybody like that.
It has its ups and downs.
I got it.
But
All
it
right.
can spring into action.
Got another one?
No, I'm done.
That's all. It's all over. Okay. All right. So the Patriots got a win last week. Yahoo. The Chiefs didn't. No big deal. I mean, should it be a big deal at this stage of the game? I mean, with 4 weeks left in the regular season?
John, they've lost more games in the last 6 games than they did all of last season.
Right. But I'm simply because the AFC seems to be, wide open. You can't tell me that the Chiefs still aren't a contender. I think they are.
Absolutely. Listen, that's 2 totally different subjects.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, guess who's only a game out of first place in the AFC West?
Yeah, right. The Denver Broncos.
Denver Broncos.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yep.
But funny enough, with a chance to seize the moment, Miami loses at home to Tennessee. Jacksonville loses at Cleveland. Baltimore was the only division winner to win in the AFC last week.
How about that?
Okay, so you have a chance to make things. You have a chance to put Patrick Mahomes in a position, and it's not all about him, but this is an interesting fact. You have a chance to put Patrick Mahomes in a position that he's never been in.
Mm-hmm.
He has never played a postseason game on the road.
Right. So,
Super Bowls are neutral sites. Bowls are neutral sites. They have, since it's been in 5 straight AFC title games, hosted all of them, and they haven't played a road playoff game since him.
You're correct. Yep, you're correct. So, and here we go. And that would be the next step for him to take. He needs to learn or needs to show he can win on the road if he's going to be, a legitimate, candidate to be mentioned in the same breath as, one TB12.
Yeah. And by the way, they haven't shown much about winning at home lately.
Nope.
Okay?
Yep.
I mean, remember last year, they lost only one home game, including the playoffs, and that was to the Bills. And by the way, Buffalo, for whatever reason, can't beat them in the playoffs, but they've gone into Kansas City and beaten them 3 straight years.
I know that's the amazing thing to me. That it also tells me that when it comes down to push comes to shove at the end, the Chiefs are the team that knows how to do it. The Bills are the ones that go through the El Foldo act.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep. So
yes, I mean the Bills have been to one AFC title game.
Yeah, right.
In this current regime,
right.
Kansas City gets there all the time. They've not all the way. They lost to New England in 2018. They lost to the Bengals
right
in 2021, but at least they're there. And that's the thing. If Kansas City gets in, that playoff savvy, that playoff experience kind of dwarfs a lot of guys. Now, Baltimore's got a bunch, although Lamar Jackson hasn't been successful.
Right.
Miami hasn't won a division title since 2008. And incredibly, the last time the Miami Dolphins won a playoff game was Bill Belichick's first year in New England.
Mm-hmm.
2000.
Wow, that's a while. I know.
Okay.
Yeah, and here we are.
Denver hasn't been to the playoffs since they won Super Bowl 50.
Right.
That was their last playoff game.
Wow. Holy. You mentioned already earlier, Russell, and briefly touched on it, but I thought that to me was one of the big things that popped out about this week's schedule on week 15 overall. That you got a bunch of 7-6 teams, and several of them are playing against each other. So we're going to get down to this weaning out process here pretty shortly. Vikings playing the Bengals, Steelers playing the Colts. You got the Broncos who are actually playing a team that's better record-wise. They're on the road playing the Lions this week. You got some 6 and 7s who are very much in the hunt. In fact, I think there's one here. Bucks playing at the Packers. Both teams are 6 and 7. The Texans are 7 and 6 with a chance to improve their lot in life. You've got the Saints at 6 and 7, a chance to improve their lot in life. Falcons at 6 and 7. Rams at 6 and 7. Bills at home. 7 and 6, against the Dallas Cowboys, which you can make an argument right now. They're playing as well as anybody in the entire league. So intriguing in terms of the fact that we're going to see this winnowing process probably work itself down a little further this week.
Well, yeah, and the thing to keep an eye on with these matchups is conference record.
Yep.
Because that's where, because we have so many teams knotted up, conference record is going to be the tiebreaker in many instances here. That's why you saw teams that were quote-unquote in and now, after 1 week of action, out. Okay? Mm-hmm. Like Cincinnati, the two divisions that are fighting for multiple spots, mm-hmm. As far as like the wild cards, are the AFC South and the AFC North. Okay? Well, the AFC North did, Cleveland beat Jacksonville. Cincinnati beat Indianapolis. Houston wound up losing to the Jets almost inexplicably. Mm-hmm. Okay? So it was funny. The only team in the AFC South that won last week were the Tennessee Titans. And ironically, the only team in the AFC East that lost last week were the Miami Dolphins.
I know. Just sometimes doesn't make sense.
No, but it's why when people, and they're still doing it.
Yep.
They're looking at the schedule.
Yep.
And going, win-loss. I have a very simple philosophy. I know I didn't invent this, okay? Mm-hmm. If you're playing good football, you can beat anyone. And if you're playing bad football, you can lose to anyone. It's that simple. It really is. And to forecast wins, we have people in our business, okay, who make predictions on a month-to-month basis. They can't pick on a week-to-week basis. So I'm just, win-loss. I mean,
we got people in this business who can't pick their nose, much less pick games.
It's funny, an old friend of mine, somebody made something talking about picks and stuff like that, and my friend Frank turned around and looked at him and said, "You couldn't pick your nose with both hands."
No. Oh, hey. It is what it is. I mean, and that's actually part of the beauty of following pro football, because it's just, it's hard to make a living on it, without things, radically changing, and the person who's trying to make money on it realizing that there's change, A lot of people like to go with what works for them,
You have injuries.
Yep.
You have weather.
Yep.
You have, these are played by human beings with emotional ups and emotional downs. Mm-hmm. There's so much that can happen. I mean, and there's more than one person involved. Okay? So listen, I understand people are complaining about the officiating, and I don't disagree with them whatsoever. Okay? But what did John Madden say? 1 inch equals, what is it? 1 equals 2 feet?
Something like that.
Okay, well, Ladarius toe knee equals offside.
Yeah, right. Ladarius toe knee. I like it. His toe and his knee looked like they were both offsides.
Well, I mean, listen, the Chiefs lately have been finding a way to lose games.
Yes.
And that's not something we have seen, okay?
It's something the Patriots have done all year, finding ways to lose.
Listen, they beat the Miami and Frankfurt. They didn't score. They won 3 straight games without scoring a point in the second half, much less a touchdown.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They blew a 10-point lead at home to the Eagles. Okay? They, had their chances against the Bills. So they're not playing very good football. Okay?
Right.
And they were down 14-0 to the Raiders before they came back and came all the way back. I understand that. But this is not a team hitting its stride whatsoever.
Right.
And so, as Chris Berman always said to us, 1's an accident, 2's a trend, 3's a problem.
Yes, it
and
is.
Now they've lost 4 out of 6.
Right.
And it'll be interesting to see if Denver can catch them. I don't necessarily think they will. Okay? But again, this could be the Super Bowl teams from a year ago. I know we had our Super Bowl rematch, on a Monday night in Kansas City a couple of weeks ago. They're both a little on the ropes right now.
Mm-hmm.
They really are. Philadelphia has given up 109 points in the last 3 games.
Significant.
109 points in 3 games. They beat the Bills in overtime, and they got shellacked by the 49ers and the Cowboys. Not even competitive.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. And they've got some time still to work on it to be competitive. A little bit of time,
they've got an easier schedule than the Cowboys,
right?
And all that.
Right.
Well, the Cowboys are beating the hell out of a lot of teams,
yeah.
And the Eagles aren't doing much of anything. So you really think the schedule is going to make a difference?
Probably not.
Okay, I watched the guys on the field. I didn't see any schedule on the field. I saw players.
Yeah. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, and it sounds like we're preaching here and stuff like that, but it just goes to show you that there's a reason teams don't win a lot of multiple titles. There's reasons for a lot of different things, and they all play out in front of our eyes. And for some people, they just ignore it.
Yeah, right. Russell, good to talk to you again, as always, my friend. Thank you.
No problem at all. We'll see what kind of tiebreakers we have by the end of Week 15. That'll be fun.
I was about to say, I think we'll probably manage to have a few to talk about next week with all these 6 and 7s and 7 and 6s in action this weekend. So that'll be part of the intrigue. Thank you, Mr. Baxter.
Can you imagine we wind up with a bunch of 7 and 7s?
Could. Still very much in the running. Still very much in it.
If you wind up with a bunch of 7 and 7s, you should do the show from a bar.
Yeah, or maybe some place that sells Keno. I don't know. Put 7 and 77 on your ticket, right?
There you go.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you. At Bax Football Gurus, where you find him on X. I want to end the show with Chad in the ATL, who says, John, if the current reports regarding Belichick's future with the team are true, what happens to Mac? I assume the new head coach will draft one of the top QBs in the draft if they're available. So what then? Does the new head coach trade Mac Jones, or do they keep him around as a backup? I hope he gets traded for his sake, because I honestly believe that he's a good dude and deserves another shot in greener pastures. I would tell you, Chad, that I think that would be the likely case. But again, if we're assuming that Bill is not going to be here, and frankly, I believe he will be here, okay? But if we're assuming that he's not going to be here, then yeah, it absolutely is up to the new coach to decide whether or not he's worth it. But I would tell you from a contractual point of view, it still makes sense for the Patriots to keep him around because he's relatively short money. So why wouldn't it depends on what you do. If you draft a quarterback, well, okay, then maybe you can get pennies for the dollar. I don't know. This is all still to be determined. This is not an absolute situation. There are a lot of different factors that can swing into this one way or the other. And the Patriots obviously need to have some flexibility there. It takes 2 teams to trade. And if teams know you're trying to get rid of him, they're not going to offer you anything for him. Would you take a 4th or a 5th round pick for a former first rounder? Probably not. But if that's all you can get, would you still trade him? I would personally rather let him play out his contract. You never know when injury is going to come into the situation. We've seen that already this year. Goodness, I mean, the quarterbacks that won games last week in the NFL. I mean, there's some real no-names out there, and it's not because, they stink. It's because the war of attrition and the quarterback derby through the NFL. You don't know what you have until you lose it. So if you've got something under good financial control, you keep it. Or at least I think you should. Our thanks to Jesse Newell from the Kansas City Star, Karen Guregian from Mass Live, the one and only Evan Lazar, and the one and only Russell Baxter for joining us on the program. Thank you very much, Maureen, for doing the setup duty, as he always does, and does a superb job with that. So we got the Pats and we got the Chiefs. It's a 1 o'clock Sunday game, no Monday Night Football. I know for some of you that's good, some of you that's not so good. But, hey, it is what it is. The Chiefs are also part of the reason that the game got flexed. We talked about that earlier in the show as well. We'll find out if they can get it back on track or if the Patriots are going to make this a game, and we'll talk about it next week. St. Pat's time. St. Pat's Channel. And believe it or not, it's officially December, and with the holidays right around the corner, you might be realizing your house needs a holiday spruce. With Bob's Discount Furniture's unbelievable prices and flexible financing on mattresses, furniture, decor, and more, you're sure to impress your guests with comfort and style. Get the ultimate home team advantage with Bob's, the official furniture store of the New England Patriots. Talk to you next week.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.